This is the Financially Simple Podcast, a show dedicated to destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner. And now, here's your host, pizza-loving, certified financial planner, Justin Goodbread.
Welcome to Financially Simple. This is a finance show for small business owners about money, how it works in our personal and business lives, and how we can build wealth to be financially independent. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread, and today we continue with our series on growing the value of your business. And specifically, we're going to deal with values, but as it relates in the strategic planning process. Roy Disney said, when your values are clear to you, making decisions become easier. And what he's talking about is not the value in terms of monetary value, but he's talking about our interpersonal values, the things that drive us, the things that makes us who we are. He also said it's not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are. See, our personal values are important to us as individuals because they guide us along our journey. They guide us as we strive to become better. They guide us in the helping us visualize what we want our future to be and ultimately how we're going to achieve our future. Every person has values. I like the word ethos. Every one of us has an ethos, a core belief, a core being of who we are. Some of our values are good. Some of them not so good. Some of them are for the good of others, and some may perceive our values to be self-serving. And self-serving is not a bad thing. We're going to talk about that. But we all have these type of values. As individuals, our values provide us with the specific individual needs. Yet, the values are self-serving. It's not a bad thing. See, we all have these individual needs. We have the understanding for self-fulfillment. We have personal values that drive our humility. They actually give us our passion, our perseverance. They actually are who we are, our individual values. That's one type of value that we have. Another type of value we have is that as it relates to relationships. We have the relationship value, and that's how we treat people. Maybe it's openness. I'm a pretty open individual. I share things about myself. Probably many times I shouldn't. I'm open. Maybe it's we trust people too easily, or maybe we trust them, in a good way. Maybe we offer kindness. Maybe we're honest. Maybe you just love. I met someone yesterday that seems like every word they said was full of compassion. I was like, man, listen to this individual. Listen to this individual's values, because I was thinking about this episode. So we have not only the individual values that drive our passions, our perseverance, what gives us self-fulfillment, but we will also have the values in our relationships, whether it be a platonic or, in a marriage or a business, whatever. We also have work values. People call these organizational values. And this is where we reflect our financial priorities. What do we do? Why do we do it? What are our productivities? What helps us develop our alliances and the value amongst the workplace? So those are what's called organizational values. And finally, we'll have societal values. We are aware of actions upon future generations. We pay attention to the environment. We strive for sustainability. These are things as a society we hold value. I want my generations in the future to understand certain things. I want my kids to understand what it's still like to grow a garden. So many people don't have that opportunity, and I was taught that by my grandfather. I think it's important. My mom still grows a small garden. I think that's a value. That's a societal value that I want. So these are 4 types of values. Yes, in every area of our lives, we are focused on values, yet we seldom focus on values until we hear something negative. A couple of years ago, actually it's been a while now, the Enron scandal. It revealed Kenneth Lay's lack of values. Maybe a more recent example in the big headline news was Bernie Madoff. In 2009, 2010, it was all of the news of Bernie Madoff and his lack of values affecting thousands of people. He was a crook. Plain and simple. But he affected thousands of people. Besides these primetime news stories that we hear, in our local small areas, we know of people who they steal time from their company. They may steal things. I always laughed at the show The Office, and somebody was taking staplers. It's like, that's kind of funny. I know people who, when they go stay at a hotel, I don't know them personally, but I've heard of people who, they go stay at a hotel, they take the towels. My grandfather would say, that's like a character, son. Ultimately, it boils down to values. But in contrast, We often hear, and I see this, I see more good than evil. I do. Maybe it's because I look for it. I love to see good. I hate evil. I really do. I hate the lack of values. But many times we see people who do good things. We see companies who go way out of the way. I remember a few years ago, I think it may be 2 years ago now, there was a major ice storm that hit the northern Atlanta area, and the interstate was a nightmare. I mean, it was a parking lot. Cars had stayed out there for a very long time. But yet a Chick-fil-A, a little small fast food restaurant, had some workers, which were able to make it there before this ice storm, and they sent workers across into the interstate to hand out sandwiches to people who were stuck on the interstate, sandwiches and biscuits. They opened up their restrooms so people could walk across the fencing and get stuck in traffic. We hear these things. We hear goodness around. I was in New York City, and I watched an individual buy a soft drink for somebody who couldn't afford it. I was like, man, look at that. We see these values that people share on a daily basis, but we've got to be careful to not mistake beliefs with values. See, many times I'll say, I believe this is the case. And beliefs are assumptions. They're just an assumption that we hold true. We formulate our beliefs from our lives experience. I'll say, I believe this is the case, or I believe X, Y, Z based on my life experience. But because of this rapidly paced world we live in, our beliefs are ever changing. New information comes in, and in a moment's notice, our belief can be changed. However, our values are not based on past information. Values are not contextual. Values are who we are. They're the center of our core. And candidly, friends, for our businesses, they're who the organization is. See, in our business, everyone on our team makes judgments and decisions based on value. According to the Barrett Values Center, value is one of the 6 key items in making decisions. And so Barrett Values Center, we're going to talk about them a little bit. They're a company which helps businesses identify the underlying values of the organization. And they identify 6 key items for decision making. They say number 1 is instincts. Sometimes we know things are right, sometimes we know things are wrong, so we'll do it off our instincts. We have our subconscious beliefs and our conscious beliefs. Those are 2 more. And those are the things, like I said, we believe is true based on our life experience. We have values, we have intuition, and we have inspiration. Those are the 6 areas which help us make decisions. And from an evolutionary perspective, value-based decision-making, intuition-based decision-making, and inspiration are still relatively new. But they're increasing. They're being used more and more as people evolve to higher levels of consciousness. And what they're getting at is, and if you've dealt with any of this in the millennial generation, and I'm close to one, I hate the term, but that's almost the way we have to describe it now. The millennial generation, they want to be a part of something big. I actually know a friend of mine, he and I were chatting today. He said, Justin, I really like my job. I know I could go make a couple $100,000 somewhere else. I'm like, dude, a couple $100,000. And truthfully, he probably could. He said, but man, I feel like we're doing a good cause and we're changing the world. What's his terminology? That's a value-based decision. That's intuition and inspiration. We start to see a little bit more of that, not so much static or economic decision-making many times. We're seeing a little bit more in the millennial generation that it's more inspirational and value-based decision.
You are listening to Financially Simple, destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner.
Truthfully, why do values matter, and why in the world am I spending time talking about values? Because value-based decision-making is necessary to uniting us around a single human principle. Let me say that again. Value-based decision-making is necessary to uniting us around a shared human principle. Let's put it this way. Value-based decision-making is necessary to uniting your team around one common principle. Let's say it another way. Value-based decision-making is necessary in uniting your entire employees, your management, and your owners around one key goal. Let's put it one more layer deep. Value-based decision-making is necessary in uniting the organization and all the team members of the organization around the goal of increasing the monetary value of the company. See, if you walk straight into your team and you say, guys, we're going to start working on growing the value of this company, growing the monetary value of the company, then I have seen where rank and file managers, even hired C positions, will buck. And they'll say, well, why? Why do we want to rock the boat? I'm making a good income. But if you can approach it as the business owner from a different perspective and show that the key values of every person in the organization is united. In other words, we're all going the same direction. And by honing our skills, we can drive the organization's net worth. So how do we deal with values as it relates to our organization? The first thing we do is we run a self-assessment. I remember the first time I saw the assessment, it actually came from the Barnett Value Center. You have to actually have somebody who has a license to run their assessment software. But I went through this assessment, and I was pretty amazed to find out that my personal values and the values of my then organization were off. I was working in a different organization at the time, and when I ran, I was like, here's where I'm going. Here's what matters to me. But yet the people that I was working lockstep day in, day out, good people, great people, they didn't hold the same values I had. And ultimately the organization's values were not my personal ones. And so I was less than motivated to help the organization because we didn't align. We didn't have the same ethos. See, we must identify our business current values, personal values, and see if those individual values align from the ground up, from the rank and file employees all the way to the chief executive, through the management team, through the sub-management teams. Every person in the organization, we need to see where their individual values are to see where the organization is headed. Once we run the self-assessment on where the values are, then we can deal with measuring, taking corrective measurements to begin shaping the values that the organization needs. Now, these two steps sound easy. They really do, but we'll soon find out that they are tough to deal with. In the upcoming episodes, we're going to be dealing with people. That's one of the subsects of the 8 core areas of business is people. And we're going to deal with how do we reshape or how do we mold the team to move in the same direction? How do we put that common goal out there? Values is a part of that. So we're going to spend a lot of time in the future episodes dealing with the team members and specifically their values, their goals, their objectives. Today, though, I just wanted to provide a quick overview as we walk through the strategic planning process. So if you'll remember, in the strategic planning process, we laid out this acronym, Vision, Mission, VM, BS, which is values and SWOT. And then you go into most of mission, objective, strategy, tactics. We're going to talk about these ideas. We're going to talk about the next episode of SWOT. What is a SWOT analysis truthfully? Why so many people get it wrong? But today, before we conclude this episode, I just want to put in your mind that values amongst your team members matter. You have to have your team charging in the same direction, and values matter. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us. The blog, financiallysimple.com, is going to hold the details of today. I'm going to have some links to the Barnett group, the Barnett Values Center. They have some really cool work on business values. You may want to take a look at them. Hey, like I say every week, share the podcast, subscribe. If you don't like the show, share it anyways. As I say every week, life is hard, life is good, life can be frustrating. Money doesn't have to be. Let's continue to make our lives at least financially simple. Hey, y'all go out and make it a great day.
You have been listening to the Financially Simple podcast. The information in this show is for informational purposes only. This show is not investment advice. Instead, seek help from a competent financial advisor. Justin Goodbread, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Heritage Investors, a registered investment advisor.